Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. I'm really excited to be joined by none other than the cricket connoisseur, Aaron. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well, Faizan. Very well. I mean, the sun is out in Warwickshire today. It's absolutely beautiful. I know it is down there in Surrey as well. Obviously, just come off the back of a fascinating series between England versus India. And yeah, to be honest, mate, pretty happy. Also, just 10 days to go until the county championship gets underway. So, all in all, pretty happy. How about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm surprised you're in such chipper spirits after getting clean swept by India, but it's fine. As Aaron has just alluded to, we are going to be going over England's tour of India, pretty comprehensive tour, four test matches, five T20s and three ODIs. We're just going to touch upon the most recent series, which is the ODIs first. India obviously edging England in that one, 2-1. But it was good in the fact that it culminated in a competitive, thrilling ending with India just edging England by 7 runs in that third ODI. First of all, what was your prediction actually going into this? Did it come out the way you thought?
Well, I don't want to say this. I'm here in my England shirt. But for the first time, arguably in like a year and a half, I got every single series spot on. Every single one. I said 3-1 in the tests, 3-2 in the T20s, and 2-1 in the ODIs.
Wow.
So that's terrifying, first of all. That's not a good sign at all, because usually my predictions are completely off the mark. It's one of my weaker parts of my cricket analysis, to be honest, the predictions. But yeah, India, I mean, came out winners in all three. And of course, we'll dissect it a bit more in depth as this show goes on. But yeah, what a series. What a series it was. Absolutely brilliant. And what a tour. I mean, I know England came out on the wrong side of the result in the end. I know we only won 4 out of the 12 games in this series. But my word, what a series it was, and what a tour. I mean, definitely memorable to say the least.
Yeah, definitely memorable. I think for some good and some probably bad reasons of certain players as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, definitely an action-packed tour.
Mhm.
It's interesting because I think the only thing that I could say that I was a little bit disappointed was the amount of one-sided matches we saw.
Mm.
Considering they're two very evenly matched teams I guess you could say in the white ball series for sure. Test matches maybe not as much in India. So the test matches I was like, okay, that's fine. But then when we got to the T20s and ODIs, it kind of one team blew hot, one team blew cold, and it
Mhm.
seemed to happen throughout most of it. And I think I remember there was one T20 and one ODI, obviously the most recent ODI, that were competitive. But I could say, actually, you know what? That went down to the wire. Whereas, normally when you see a cricket match and you know what the result's going to be kind of midway or 3/4 in,
Mhm.
to me, I'm like, come on, you guys have got this ability. I'm like, where what's happening? And it just seemed like they caught each other on the wrong days almost, which is quite
Mm.
funny. But on the whole, the level of skill on show I thought was fantastic. I mean, these two are England and India are arguably the two best cricketing nations in the world at the moment. So we definitely saw some incredible flashes of brilliance from both. On the ODI series, then you said 2-1. I actually predicted 2-1 and 3-2 for T20s like you, but the test matches I was a bit optimistic and I said 2-2. So I got that one wrong, unfortunately. No clean sweep for me. Let's, I guess, start off with England actually, and a couple of talking points, because obviously coming into it, World Cup champions, so there was some expectation, but no Joe Root because he's been rested, no Wokes, who I think a lot of people forget, and I'm sure you don't because you're from Warwickshire,
Yep.
that he is so integral to England's ODI kind of format. I mean, he's so integral. He opens the bowling with Archer, and also he's a very handy bat lower down the
Mhm.
order. So, and he's done very well. And I think he's underrated actually, not just here but around the world. And when I was talking to subscribers, they kind of forget that he's even part of it. So obviously him and Root, and then Archer was injured, which was a huge miss. But to be fair, on the flip side, India had Bumrah, who had recently gotten married, so he doesn't want to play cricket. He's just enjoying himself on his honeymoon. And we've got Jadeja, who's injured as well. So I guess you kind of say is a little bit of equal in terms of ability players missing. Maybe England slightly a little worse off. I wanted to get your thoughts though on, first of all, Bairstow. I want to start
Mhm.
with him because he had a pretty bad test series, but in the ODIs especially, he was really impressive for me. He just normally, actually, when I first remember seeing England play ODI cricket with those two opening up, you used to say Roy's the one who looks good, he's the one that looks good. He's really attractive to watch. And Bairstow, he might clear his front foot. He's a bit ugly, but actually it was all the way around in this series. I felt Bairstow was really good to watch. Very kind of in line, full face of the bat. He knows his arc. He knows his arc is between maybe mid off to square leg. He knows that's my arc, and I'll back myself. Whereas Roy, I thought, was going quite hard at the ball. Seemed to just be in T20 mode and didn't back himself in his timing. What were your thoughts on Bairstow and Roy as well?
Well, let's face it, Johnny Bairstow, absolutely exceptional. Brilliant series. Loves playing India as well. In fact, since the 1st of January 2019, averages over 60 against India in ODI cricket, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's just a testament to the pedigree of Johnny Bairstow's batting against the men in blue. And in this series, he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. And I just think of that barrage of 4s and 6s against Kuldeep Yadav. It was absolutely blockbuster to watch as an England fan. It really was tearing apart. I mean, fair enough, they didn't have Bumrah, they didn't have Jadeja, but that Indian attack, we all know about the depth and the strength in depth that India possess. And he took the attack to them in truly brutal fashion. It was brilliant to watch, and I think we all enjoyed it. And of course, deserving man of the series, in my opinion, Johnny Bairstow. And as you said, he looked so composed, so assured in his game. Of course, unfortunately, in the last game to get out for one, did go across his stumps, which was a bit strange. It's something we didn't really see in the first two. In fact, if anything, he was staying more leg side and then decided to walk across his stumps, which was quite strange. But other than that last dismissal, absolutely imperious. Brilliant series for Johnny Bairstow. And yeah, deserving man of the series. In terms of Jason Roy, I actually agree with you there, Faizan. I think he didn't look himself again. But with that being said, he had a really bad 2020. He looked woefully out of form in ODI cricket. He's averaging something like 9, and his strike rate was about 80. So maybe that's something which can be understandable. Maybe this is almost a stepping stone for him heading into future series to get that rhythm back. Because as we all know with Jason Roy, when he's at his best, when he's confident, when he's in full flow and rhythm, he's one of the greatest batsmen on the planet in white ball cricket. But in this series, I felt like he's still just trying to find that rhythm in ODI cricket, slowly but surely getting back. With that being said, I don't think he had a bad series at all. He really didn't. I mean, even in the last game, that beautiful shot against Bhuvaneshwar Kumar down the ground. Oh, so good to watch. So good to watch. And I know he got out, obviously, on the last ball of the over. But yeah, those two as an opening combo, absolutely brilliant. We're very fortunate here in England to have those two opening the batting for the Three Lions. And yeah, may we see many more substantial partnerships to come from those pair heading into the future.
Yeah, I mean, these two have just been in imperious form for a number of years. I mean, Bairstow, people might forget, but he averages nearly 50. It's like 49.36 or something, I think, is his average, which I'm sure has been boosted after this series slightly as well. And Jason Roy in the 40s, and they both players' strike rates are above 100 actually, which is incredible in ODI cricket, and that shows England's, I guess, philosophy, which I want to get your thoughts on, kind of different philosophies between the two teams even. Yeah, I agree with Jason Roy. It's so funny because I reckon that last innings where he got out for not many, I think it was 14, wasn't it? He hit Bhuvaneshwar Kumar for 14 off that over. They got out last ball. He probably looked the best that he had done throughout the whole series. That first ball that he got, it was swinging away. It was a half volley, just lent on it, cover drive. It was just beautiful to watch. First ball, I just thought, you know what, he's going to do it. This is going to be the one where he's going to show because obviously as a Surrey fan, I've seen him for a number of years, and I know what he's capable of, and I know that he's not someone who is just, I want to hit as hard as I can, fast hands. Like he can play proper shots. On top of having that bit of innovation that you get from T20, and I felt like he'd gone away from that a little bit. And as you said, his form has been pretty poor, very poor in 2020. So I guess this is a start of something better.
Yeah,
and I saw him tighten up a little bit in the way that he plays. He was kind of falling over slightly when he was hitting. It just didn't really seem in nick 100%, but that was a good sign. And he just got a really good ball from Bhuvaneshwar Kumar.
Yeah, beautiful ball.
It was beautiful, wasn't it? I mean, it just shaped in a little bit, just seamed and top off stump. And I think he just thought to himself, normally, right, when he gets out, he'll have a fit, he'll chuck his gloves, and he gets really annoyed with himself. But that one, I think he just thought, oh, okay, fine, fair enough, and that's when he got a good ball. So I can think fair enough. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in better form and hopefully for Surrey as well. But yeah, that's a good sign, I think, for England. I guess then going down the order, why not? Stokes at 3. What were your initial thoughts when England did that?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's a very, very interesting one. And I imagine that we'll talk about, obviously, squad rotation and selection at some point in today's show, Faizan. But to be honest, I think as soon as we saw that first innings and he got out for one, I think a lot of people were thinking, oh dear, this is an experiment gone horribly wrong. And then in the second ODI, he produced arguably the knock of the series. I think that alongside Bairstow's 124 were the two real standout knocks for me. That 99 from 52 deliveries. And again, it was brutal power hitting against the likes of Kuldeep Yadav and Krunal Pandya. For me, I don't think it's long term. I'm going to be honest, because we have Joe Root there. Joe Root's been so successful as our anchor, was brilliant during the World Cup, brilliant during bilateral series beforehand as well. But it does just show that Ben Stokes can bat in the top order. And the interesting thing for me, I know it's a different format, but there are going to be more and more conversations about him being in the top four for the T20Is. There just are. When you see that, when you see what Ben Stokes is capable of, when he has that bit more time to really build an innings per se, and then explode as the innings progresses, I think he's knocking down the door to the top four. And I think we could actually touch upon that a bit later, Faizan. But for me, very, very impressive. He was impressive. And the way in which he got out, yes, it was very, very unlucky. But up until that point, I think he was excellent. I really do think he is good. But for me, for the time being, as soon as Joe Root comes back, I'd put him down at 4 or 5, if I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't keep him at 3 long term.
Yeah, it was initially, it was a bit of a strange one for me because I just thought when he got out for one, I wasn't like, oh, they shouldn't put him there. I was more like, initially before he even got that one, I just thought, as you're thinking, well, Root has been one of England's best threes in ODI cricket probably ever, and he's one of their best white ball players ever as well. To be fair, if you look at how well he's played over the past whatever it is 10 years, but he will just slot in there, no doubt. He'll slot in at 3. Well, that's what I think anyway. So my initial thinking was, why they put him at 3 when long term he's not going to be at 3? Why not put him at 4, where potentially he might be able to bat long term if they don't want to put, if Morgan doesn't want to be there. If Morgan says, actually, I'm going to take a back seat and I'll go down 1 or 2, if they put Butler up, who knows? Then he might say, okay, well, Stokes, you can be at 4 and we want to have you see more balls. But maybe it was just the case of, maybe long term I'll go with him at 4, but in this series, because Joe wasn't there, well, here we go. You can have as many balls as kind of possible without opening to face and kind of get used to batting a bit earlier on in the innings. So can you see them potentially it being Root at 3, Stokes on 4? Then you don't think it'll be the other way around, I'm assuming.
No, I think that could be. And of course, that all depends on Owen Morgan. I mean, at the end of the day, it's his team. It's his philosophy. He has created this team pretty much from the ground up ever since 2015. So, of course, that's Owen Morgan's decision. But as you rightfully said there, Faizan, if he does want to make that decision, he wants to take a bit of a backseat in the team from a batting perspective and wants to move down to 5, for example, put Stokes at 4. And as you rightfully said, this series gave him a bit more experience of having that extra responsibility, batting slightly higher up the order.
Yeah, I agree. I want to actually touch upon the kind of newbies per se. Milan's not really a newbie, but he'd only played 1 ODI before this series and then played a second, got a not out, and the third one obviously he was quite impressive, getting 50 off 50 balls. And then I thought he was going to start to motor, but got out in a pretty loose way, let's say. I think he was very frustrated with himself. Livingston had a couple of flashes of some big hitting, which I know here for Lancashire, he normally bats at 3, if I'm not mistaken, in the 50 over format. So it was interesting. I initially thought they might go Livingston at 3 instead of Stokes, right? And they didn't. They went with him at 6, but he seemed to have just taken it on really and just said, well, okay, I've got a bit more license. So rather than playing that more anchor role, I can be more explosive and play almost a T20 knock. And that's what he was doing in those 2. What were your thoughts on the 2? And can you see them? I'm assuming they're going to be in and around the squad, but can you see them at any point being able to push forward after this kind of this short, I guess, bit of data that we've got from them?
Well, of course, it is very, very limited data, to say the least. Let's face it, they played 2 games. But with that being said, I think for Milan, I'm going to be honest, T20I cricket is for him. I think that's where he's really established his niche in this England side. In one-day cricket, he's not going to be playing 3 or 4. I'm going to be honest, in particular, not number 3, because we've been talking there about Joe Root. Joe Root's cemented that to an extent that not many other people on the planet have, per se. With regards to Livingston, though, that's an interesting one. And it is a very, very interesting case for 2023. Because let's face it, Liam Livingstone isn't that old. He's still got time to mature and develop as a cricketer heading into that 2023 World Cup in India. So he could potentially be in that team. But I think that all depends on Owen Morgan. If Owen Morgan decides not to be the captain, or if he decides to retire in ODI cricket beforehand, we don't know. Obviously, at the end of the day, that is Owen Morgan's decision, and we'll respect it either way. But I think if Owen Morgan was to theoretically retire and there was a place in that middle order, it'd be between Livingston and Billings. And if you want that extra bit of bowling, Liam Livingston makes sense. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in this series. And you mentioned there about a couple of the shots. That shot that he played, I think it was either second or third ball, against Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, was one of the most outrageous, audacious, and quite frankly extraordinary shots that I think I've seen on a cricket field in a long time. It was absolutely preposterous. To do that, I think, on his second ball in ODI cricket, to have that confidence, the swagger, the self-belief in your batting, to walk down the pitch and hit arguably the bowler of the series over his head for six. My God, the boy's got confidence. He really has. So for me, I think Livy is the more likely one. But as I said, it depends. That England top 6, top 7 even is so strong. We have so many options. But I think out of those two, if one of them was to make the push into a starting 11, I think it'd be Liam Livingston.
Yeah, I agree. I think long term, given Darren Milan's age as well, and maybe the style of players that they are, I can definitely see that. And it's interesting to see long term what Livingston does. But wouldn't be surprised if he gets more chance. I think Milan's there just because, I mean, he was a reserve player. And then what happened is Morgan and Billings got injured, right? And that's why he came in. But I think it's funny because I reckon if this was any other era of English cricket, he probably would be in a starting 11 in the ODIs Milan. But it's just the fact that they've got Root, they've got Stokes, they've got Morgan, they've got all these players that they can count. They're World Cup champions. I mean, this is probably the strongest ODI team we've ever seen for England. So,
easily.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's almost a nightmare trying to get into that side in a way. It's almost easier to get into the test side, which sounds crazy to say because most of the time it's not in most teams. Very briefly, I just want to touch on Morgan and Butler because they didn't have a particularly good ODI series. I mean, Morgan only didn't play too many games, obviously, because of the injury, split his webbing on his hand. But Butler seems to have this slight deficiency. I don't know what you think about this, but it came to fruition, I think, in the T20 series. And then I think India exploited it, which is him falling over a little bit, kind of over his front pad, playing around it, and his head is not quite still, which he has this very unorthodox way of playing, which most of the time works. And his head is not. If you teach a kid how to play cricket, you wouldn't necessarily show them Joss Butler. And that's nothing against Joss Butler because he's supremely talented. But if you see a lot of times when he plays a drive, his head is tilted. But the issue is that when he's getting out here, getting trapped LBW, his head is almost falling over and he's off balance whilst he's getting trapped, which is why he's getting trapped for me, LBW, like middle to leg stump. And he's kind of falling over himself. Is that an issue for Joss Butler going forward? And I'm assuming it's something that needs to be tweaked and tightened up. What did you notice it at all, or was it just me?
I did notice that actually. With the Bhuvaneshwar Kumar dismissal in particular, I think that was the real standout for me because, as you said, his head was very off balance. It was off kilter. It was very, well, untraditional to say the least, as opposed to what you're told really and how to bat. But for me, I'm not sure whether it's a problem or not. I don't think that we can really pin it down to this series. I think we're going to have to see and kind of we'll measure that over the summer. I think if Pakistan and Sri Lanka, for example, and Pakistan later on in the year, of course, when we make the journey over there before the World Cup, if it does keep cropping up, then yes, something does need to change. But you know what? It's Joss Butler. It's Joss Butler. He will learn. He can evolve. He can adapt his game. He's one of the greatest white ball cricketers on the planet right now. So for me, I don't think it's going to be an absolutely lethal flaw in his game. But if he deems it, as something which is going to be problematic, then yes, he can work on it. But again, that's all up to Joss. I don't think it's going to be something which will cost him too many runs in the long term, as long as it doesn't keep cropping up again and again and again.
I agree. And as an England fan, on Owen Morgan, obviously he didn't play too many matches, but having a look at his stats since the 2019 World Cup, I think he scored 100. I don't think he scored a 50. I think the 100 was against Ireland, which no offense to Ireland, but they're not as big as the Australias, the Indias, the South Africas, etc. Is there a slight worry among England fans that he's on the decline and maybe he's taking that back seat? Because for me, someone who's looking in, I'm a little bit of an England fan. I wouldn't say I'm a diehard. I mean, I follow them very closely. But for me, looking on the outside in, I feel like he's just slightly on the slide. And as you said, you mentioned retirement, which I don't think we would normally talk about. But I just think he's been there, done it all. He's revolutionized his whole ODI side, especially since 2015 to now. So it's been 6 years. And it would have been a lot of effort, a lot of time put into it to completely overhaul England's philosophy, the way that all the players as well, and just really sell it to the media, especially. What are your thoughts on it?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And for me, just before I go into Owen Morgan and the whole debate, I want him as captain. The fact is, Owen Morgan is England's greatest ever ODI and T20 leader. He's an absolute genius. He really is. He's up there with Mahendra Singh Dhoni for me and Kane Williamson in terms of recent leaders in white ball cricket. Now, for me, it is an interesting one because, again, it's completely up to Owen Morgan. You mentioned there rightfully, after the absolute shambles that was 2015, getting knocked out by Bangladesh at the Adelaide Oval. Still remember that quite clearly. Thank you very much, Rubel Hussain. I do remember that very clearly. 260 all out we were at the Adelaide Oval. Again, 6 years ago, still haven't let that go. But yeah, coming from the ashes and the embers of absolute shambles and embarrassment, national embarrassment as well, he rebuilt this side. So no matter what happens with regards to his decline, I do think there has been a decline in his batting, but that happens. The fact is, every single player, even the greatest, the Tendulkars, the Cooks, the Callises, the Dravids, the Pontings, everyone has their peak. And then there is a decline. And if this is the start of Owen Morgan's decline, it's just part and parcel of the game. We as England fans need to realise that. But with that being said, in white ball cricket, so an ODI and T20, I still think that there is a place for Owen Morgan as a leader. And I think a great example of this can be seen in the CPL with the St. Lucia Zooks and Darren Sammy. Now, I spoke on a podcast before the CPL started in 2020. I was speaking with Mashalan Santoki from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and they said Darren Sammy should be nowhere near the team because he's not contributing with the bat, he's not contributing with the ball. But I said he's contributing with his leadership. And at the end of the day, Darren Sammy, in the 11 for the entire tournament, led his side brilliantly and got them all the way to the final. So in white ball cricket, in T20s in particular, I do feel that Owen Morgan's leadership alone is almost an X factor for England. Even if he's not necessarily contributing 30, 40 runs every single game with the bats or fielding particularly well, that leadership, those sharp bowling rotations, the proactive team management per se, I think is absolutely vital and invaluable to English cricket. So for me, Owen Morgan, even though he is on a bit of a decline, and the stats say that, as you said, since that 2019 World Cup haven't been brilliant, he still commands a place in these England sides. And for me, the key thing with Morgan as well, it's his philosophy that underpins this entire team. Okay, this has come from Owen Morgan, Andrew Strauss, the national selectors, Ed Smith, etc. And they have created this team from absolutely nothing and taken them from zeros to heroes within the space of 4 years. So the issue that I would have if Morgan was to retire per se is could a Joe Root, a Ben Stokes, a Joss Butler, for example, maintain this for English cricket? And in my opinion, I'm not sure that they could, because this is Owen Morgan's philosophy. If you give the captaincy to Roots or Stokes or Butler, they'll put their own variations, their own twist on the captaincy, which may or may not work, but you're never ever going to be able to replicate Owen Morgan, the guile, the skill, the mastery of captaincy. It's a real art form. So for me, Faizan, Owen Morgan's the captain, even if he is declining, keep him in the side for as long as he deems fit.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. It's a weird one because you almost don't want, and he's not at that stage by any means, but you don't want it to get to a case like this where he's a passenger, but then also his leadership, as you said, is so invaluable. So then if it's invaluable, then you just say, well, okay, technically you could just have him at 7. He'll probably put himself at 7 and say, well, I can put myself at 7. And, like we're talking in a couple of years' time, I'd assume. And, but I'll lead the team and on the field as well, making the important decisions. And a good example, actually, and being the Pakistan fan that I am, is Imran Khan, right, in the 1992 World Cup. He was towards the end of his career. He pretty much didn't do much in that World Cup, really. But he led the side really well. And his philosophy and his kind of mentality led Pakistan to the World Cup win, really. But in terms of contribution with wickets and runs, it wasn't a huge amount from him. So maybe Morgan will have that similar effect. And I think at the moment, England are in a sweet spot, especially in white ball cricket, thanks to him. So they'll definitely have to give him as much time as I think probably he wants, really. I think he'll be on his terms. Lastly, on England front then, Sam Curran and I want to talk about Sam Curran. Obviously, a fantastic knock on 95. On the whole, though, he was a little bit disappointing for me. But as a Surrey fan, I know how good he can be. I mean, I remember watching him bowling at 17, opening the bowling for Surrey at the Oval, and thinking, this kid is going to be really good. He's going to play for England. I remember saying he's definitely going to play for England. And he has, and I think he's just been he's definitely been bred that way, as in he's grown up like you're definitely going to play for England. Surrey have definitely taken a liking to him. He's got this unbelievable talent that he seems to have. Probably didn't pick up the pace that I thought he would, but that probably is due to his height as well, and also his action. But he seems to have obviously developed his batting, which some people wouldn't have thought. Very good knock, but on the whole, I thought the series, apart from that knock, put that to one side, which is a bit harsh to do, didn't do too much in the ODIs, and we'll touch upon him in a bit in the T20s, which I thought again is a little bit disappointing. We talked about Chris Woakes, right? How important he is, and for me, if you're picking an England ODI side, it's really between Sam Curran and Chris Woakes. I don't think you'd have room for both because Ben Stokes is that second seam all-rounder. So my question to you is, some people are saying Chris Woakes is going to be sweating. For me, I think Chris Woakes just slots in straight away. I think Sam Curran, this is a good sign. It's a kind of coming of age, a little bit of maturity to say, actually, you know what? I can do it at this stage. He'll be in and around the side still, and he'll get his chances when they're rotating. But he's more of a long-term prospect. Do you agree?
100%. I can't really disagree. Obviously, I'm a massive Chris Woakes fan. And for me, the way in which he's been well treated on this entire tour has been less than exemplary, to say the least. Yeah. But for me, Sam Curran, he's got so many years. He really has. It's not a case of competition between him and Chris Woakes at the moment. Chris Woakes, for me, is in the peak of his powers. You mentioned the 2019 World Cup. He was England's second leading wicket taker. Absolutely brilliant with the new ball. Just destroyed opening partnerships. So I was there for the 2019 semi-final when he got David Warner at Edgbaston. Like, that's what Chris Woakes does. He delivers magic. He did the exact same thing against Australia in the summer. He produces these brilliant knocks. Think back to 2016 against Sri Lanka and the 95 at Trent Bridge alongside Liam Plunkett. So for me, at the moment, Chris Woakes is our number 7 or number 8, depending on the batting lineup. He is that second seam all-rounder. With that being said, though, I know Sam Curran, I understand your point. I think he averaged around about 68, 70 in this particular ODI series with the ball. I don't think he's ready just yet to become a starter in every single series. But with that being said, that final knock that we saw, that 95 not out, should have got another single, though, to make it 96, would have been the highest ever ODI number 8 score. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But what we've seen from Sam Curran in and around every single different format is the sheer promise, potential, and ceiling that this guy's got. And I think it's incredibly high. So for the time being, I'll stick with Chris Woakes, of course. Got to stick with my local boy. I'm a Warwickshire fan at the end of the day, but Sam Curran, what a prospect. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of him in an England shirt over the next few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think the potential is definitely there for sure from Sam Curran. He's shown it in glimpses, hasn't he? I think he's only 22, so he's got a long way left yet. But yeah, Chris Woakes is just he's invaluable, really. I think in that ODI side for sure. On India, then they obviously won. They're all happy. All the Indian fans, telling me clean sweep, and I'm like, no, fine, fair enough. Good for them. Let's start at the top of the order. So Rohit Sharma, we know he's probably one of the best white ball players, ODI players of all time. Really, I think it's safe to say. Didn't have the best series, but I don't want to talk about him too much because I think we know how good he is. And really, there's not too much to talk about for him. Shikha Darwin, though, he was really impressive, I think, for me. Not necessarily the best to watch, but, well, for me personally anyway, doesn't seem to have the ability to play in T20s. But ODI seems to be this sweet spot where you can go between a 90 to 100 strike rate, and he seems so comfortable within it. And he just looked at home, really. And again, actually outperforming and just got 169 runs at an average of only 36. But to be fair, that was one bad innings, but the other two that he played, I think, just showed his class really there. And I think he's pretty invaluable to them. There were a lot of question marks around him going into the ODI series just because he has no one in T20s, but surely he is just a nailed on. Him and Rohit Sharma are nailed on for India. And I guess this feeds quite nicely, though, into the philosophy that India employ, which you will know that England are very gung-ho for the first 10. And when I say gung-ho, they're going at 7s, 8s. Sometimes they will go at 7 and 8s and over for the first 10. Roy Bairstow blitzing people away, for the most part anyway. Now, India employed a very different tactic for the first 2 games. They were going, I think they were 39 for 1 in the first game, and then it was 40 for 0 in the second. So they were going at 4s. I actually said on my review, if they can just tweak that in the first 10, even go to 5.5, they will be able to push towards that 350 mark. They went even more and went to 65 for naught. Really fantastic start. There's obviously been a tweak in philosophy after England chasing that second ODI and got that 300 plus score, which they thought was probably enough. I think it was 337 in the end. It was. Are we going to see a change in philosophy from India now going forward?
That is a great question. And in my opinion, I'm not sure that we will. Because although you said there 65 for none and they got off to a blistering start, it's a brilliant partnership, wasn't it? 100 for none within the first 14 overs. Let's see how the actual innings ebbed and flowed. Because 100 for none, then it was 128 for 4, then it was 256 for 4, and then it was 329 all out. So it's very much a roller coaster. It fluctuated all over the place. And for me, the innings never really had this constant momentum. It was a constant case of start well, rebuild, start well, go well again, I suppose, and then collapse. For me, there just wasn't this constant flow that we've seen so many times in Indian ODI cricket. And I know there has been a lot of talk about obviously the approach, saying that should we try and implement England's approach? In my opinion, that depends on those Indian players. If they think that they can go out there consistently every single match, do a Bairstow and Roy, get 60, 70, 80 runs, try and go for it. But if it doesn't work, go back to the approach that has worked so well for India. Let's not forget 2019. Yes, they had an absolute disaster in the semi-final, but they finished top of the table. Okay, so it's obviously an approach that works. It's an approach that wins them ODI games. They've won this series. At the end of the day, they have the bowling capabilities to defend totals. So for me, I don't think that they can do a like for like. I don't think it's as simple as going, Roy and Bairstow can do that. So Shikha and Rohit, you go out there, do the exact same thing, and we're going to just copy England. And I know that from experience because England tried doing that in 2015. We tried to copy Australia. We didn't have the same caliber of talent. I'm not saying that India's batsmen aren't as talented at all. I'm just saying that you have to actually manipulate your approach depending on that batting lineup. So for me, I don't think the approach will change long term. The only thing that I think with India at the moment is the personnel. I feel like they keep on chopping and changing. They just need stability. We saw that in the World Cup, for example. They brought in Vijay Shankar. They're thinking of bringing in Ambati Rayudu beforehand as well. They need a solid and dependable top 6, top 7, just as England. And another real important thing as well, which was touched upon the other day, was if you look at the great Indian teams, which had the Tendulkars, the Sehwags, the Yuvraj Singhs, for example, they had batsmen who could also bowl a couple of overs. And it just really complemented the balance of the side really nicely. So that's something I think India could do in the future. Whether or not we'll see Rohit Sharma bowling the off spin, does have a couple of IPL hat tricks, who knows? Only time will tell. But I think that's the real issue for India. I don't think it's the approach. I think it's the overall balance of the side as opposed to the mentality.
That's interesting. I've got a slightly different view to you. I agree with you in the sense that they shouldn't employ and try and copy England because I think that's the wrong way to go. I think, as you said, you need to have exactly the same personnel. You need to play to your strengths. One thing I would say is that for me, India have this really similar to England, I guess, this strength and depth and talent and plethora of talent really at their disposal that to me, especially we saw in the T20 series that they can score quickly. To me, it's just a case of a slight tweak. And it's weird because you definitely hit the nail on the head and said it was a roller coaster, that third ODI. But to me, it was a case of the first 10, I thought they did quite well. And what they've been really good at and in the past and also in the first 2 ODIs is the last 10 going big, right? So for me, it was if they can just go slightly quicker in the first 10, play in the middle how they normally do, because they've got Kohli there normally or whoever else. KL Rahul had a fantastic series after having a pretty poor T20 series. And kind of showed his worth, I guess. He's got an average of 46. So for me, he was a certain and I guess repaid that faith that India showed. And then in the last 10, if they can go big as they do with your Hardik Pandyas, with your Rishabh Pants, and the issue for them was that they lost wickets regularly. And for me, it was okay. I looked at it and said, is it a case that maybe it's the new philosophy or a slight tweak that's caused that and how they've thrown their wickets away? But then I looked at it and I said, actually, what was it? Really, the main kind of points for me were the 2 wickets that Adil Rashid got, which was Rohit Sharma and Shikha Darwin. So very quick succession, and I think it was 3 over gap. And then Moeen Ali got Virat Kohli with a good delivery as well. That turned a lot more than he expected. And he looked completely aghast, as always, whilst getting out to Moeen Ali. Fun little fact as well, because I know that you love a stat, is that Moeen and Rashid have both got Virat Kohli out. I think it's 9 times each. In white ball cricket, and the only person to do it more was Tim Southey. So all the Indian fans watching will hate me for saying this, but I think it's safe to say he's a little bit of a bunny for Rashid and Moeen Ali and the two spinners. But for me, it was more a case of that England got them out with pretty good balls, but 8 times out of 10, the fact that maybe didn't go quite according to plan, they still got, what was it, 329?
Yep.
Then going forward, if it goes slightly more to plan, they're going to be getting that 350 quite easily. And that's really where I was trying to go with, rather than having to really expect themselves to, we have to go completely gung-ho and put all your eggs in one basket for the last 10. That's kind of my view on it. And I think I can tell you've got a slightly different view on it. And I think lots of people have varying views on it. Because I just think India played such a certain way for a number of years. But going forward to that 2023 World Cup, I'll just be very surprised. And it's a really controversial opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would be surprised if they employ the old tactics that they have been, but they go into that World Cup and they win it. They might win it on talent alone, because that's how talented this Indian side is. But I just think in terms of philosophy, England have it right in terms of the kind of the way they're going. India, I think, need to find their different version of it for sure. I don't think it can be the same. But yeah, for me, that's the way to go forward. I don't know. We'll see, won't we? We'll see.
We'll have to wait and see what Ravi Shastri and the think tank come up with, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, India, they'll experiment, I'm sure. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar is so good though for India, isn't he? Yeah. We mentioned it, and he's come out from injury, and he just started off from where he left. And I remember watching him and thinking he was quite slow. I think he started off when he was like 120 k's. He's gone up to like 135 now, and he's still swinging the ball around in Indian conditions, subcontinent with the white ball, both ways. Gets a bit of nip off the seam as well. And I'm thinking to myself, this is just incredible to watch. And I'm Pakistani, but I'm saying actually, I really love watching him bowl, which is a surprise, right? Probably for most people. And he is just someone that I think he's a complete nightmare to face and probably underrated. What did you think of him?
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And something else, I just want to throw a quick stat out there in case there's any IPL fans. I did a bit of an analysis into Bhuvaneshwar Kumar's power play stats. His economy in the IPL power play is 5.72 runs and over. I mean, it's staggering. It's staggering. The level of skill and guile. I said it earlier, I can list so many adjectives and superlatives, and none of them would really describe my feelings of just how good an in-form, on-rhythm, on-song Bhuvaneshwar Kumar is. He's absolutely unstoppable. In this series, his economy rate is 4.65. Now, in comparison to other Indian seamers, Shardul Thakur, I think, had a good series as well, but 6.72. You look at Nasarajan and Krishna, there was pushing about 7 runs and over as well. I mean, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar is an absolutely brilliant weapon for India to have in their arsenal in T20 and ODI cricket. He's absolutely brilliant. And this series just showcased the best of Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. There was so much skill, the swing that he was able to generate. That first over to Jason Roy, I know it went for 14, but that last delivery was textbook. The wrist position was absolutely immaculate. The little nip off the seam and the late swing as well. I know this was against England, but I was just sat there. I wanted about 10, 15 replays of that. It's perfection in terms of seam bowling with a white ball. So yeah, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, in one word, outstanding. Had an absolutely amazing series.
Yeah, he's incredible, isn't he? It's funny. I think it's Michael Atherton said that the best swing bowlers, they get backspin almost off the seam because of the flick of the wrist. And the best are the ones that have the most control, and he's one of them that does, for sure. Shardul Thakur, as you said, he had a very good kind of white ball series on the whole, I think. He was pretty impressive for me. And it's funny because I remember seeing him in the T20s and I just thought, I don't really rate him. I just thought, I don't know why, my initial thought was he looks quite average, if I'm being honest with you. But then he just seems to have this knack of getting wickets in the middle overs and just getting big wickets. And it just kept on happening. And it's almost like he's going to be a staple in the Indian side. What are your thoughts?
Well, it is an interesting one. And let's face it, India have got a brilliant seam attack. No matter who they go with, you got Mohammad Shami as well, who didn't play in this series. Jasprit Bumrah. The options are absolutely limitless. And I suppose if you're an India fan at the moment, you must be feeling pretty confident, no matter what format, because with good seamers alongside a world-class spin attack, yeah, you're always going to have a very good bowling lineup in subcontinental conditions. But for me, as you said, these key wickets that he was taking, breaking partnerships, and I thought in particular against left-handers, he was absolutely brilliant with the change of pace, the cutters into the surface. I think he had a very, very strong series. The only thing that I will say, again, at times a bit erratic. So if you look at Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, for example, he chooses a line and length and he just bowls on the channel again, changing the wrist position, trying to generate swing. where Shardul Thakur searches for wickets at times. And that, to me, does come at a detriment sometimes. It does mean that he bowls in the slot and he gets hit for 4s or 6s. But it is so, so valuable to have a guy like that. Look at the 2019 World Cup, for example, in England with Plunkett. Now, Plunkett, probably a lot of people on paper would have looked at that. They would have thought Wood, Archer, Woke, Stokes, and then you got Plunkett. Well, we're going to go after Plunkett. It's exactly what teams did, and he had a knack of picking up wickets. So Shardul Thakur, for me, even though he's not the most economical, sometimes in white ball cricket, it's better to have a wicket taker who is that just a little bit more expensive. So for me, I think if India persists with him, could be a very, very useful option heading into the future.
Yeah, I agree. He's got a natural way swing, but good off cutters, and he's a bit erratic. I think it's funny because most bowlers you'd assume are better in the middle overs rather than the death, but he seems to be more comfortable at the death and actually seems to pick up more wickets or being more economical, which is crazy to think about. But India have got a few bowlers like that, and one of them is Prasidh, who's new for India anyway, and he came in, and so did Krunal Pandya, Hardik Pandya's older bro. He came in and fireworks in his first match.
Yep.
Got a bit of tap with his left arm spin, but he's almost the he would be a like for like replacement for someone like Jadeja, right? Who I think will slot back in. What were your thoughts with Prasidh obviously bowling kind of upwards of 145 Ks and at times looked good, but also got slapped a bit as well, to be fair. Kind of mixed bag. What were your thoughts on the two?
Well, it is, and I'll start with Prasidh Krishna because I'm an RCB fan, and of course I do like Karnataka as well. Just get that out there. They are my state team in Indian cricket, and he does play for the boys at the Chinnaswamy. I thought he was pretty impressive, to be honest. That Yorker to Butler, I know they ended up losing, but that was a brilliant piece of bowling. It really was, and you could just tell by the look of Joss's face. I mean, he almost appreciated just how good the bowling was. So for me, at times, again, erratic. But what was it? 3 games that he played? His first 3 ODIs. He's in an India shirt, the pressure on his shoulders. It's bound to happen. You can't always have a dream debut. You can't get a 5 for and have an economy rate below 5. So for me, I don't think it's fair to judge him on this one series. But let's say that India do need that little bit of extra zip, the X factor in a country like South Africa, for example. He could be very, very useful. And we didn't really see a short ball, but he's got a pretty mean short ball as well when there's a bit of assistance in the surface. So for me, Prasidh Krishna maybe didn't have the greatest of series economic wise, but he took 6 wickets, India's second leading wicket taker alongside Bhuvi, and I thought at times very, very impressive. Now, with regards to Krunal, of course, we have to touch upon that knock. Absolutely brutal. The way in which he dispatched Tom Curran so disdainfully was very, very impressive to see, and of course, had that lovely touching tribute to his late dad. The only thing that I will say, as you rightfully said there, Faizan, I don't think he's a starter in any shape or form because you've got Ravindra Jadeja, the very essence of a 3-dimensional cricketer. Gun bowler, great batsman, and one of the greatest, if not the greatest fielders on the planet right now. So with Krunal, at times impressive. With the bowling, didn't really impress me, I'm going to be honest. He just fires in arm ball after arm ball after arm ball. And we've seen in international cricket, you can be very successful. You'll know this firsthand, Faizan. Imad Wasim is absolutely brilliant. He fires in the Yorkers and the arm balls to perfection. But the problem with Krunal, his line and length was all over the place. So it was arm balls, but he wasn't trying to get any spin. And it was just going into Ben Stokes' slot and bang, 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 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, and see you later, son. It was as simple as that. So Krunal, I think, is a bit hot and cold. But again, is he going to be a starter? Probably not. So maybe not the worst thing for India heading into the future.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think his bowling was a little bit one-dimensional. You've got to be super accurate if you're going to bowl that quickly and flat. And unfortunately, he bowled into Stokes' arc, as you rightfully pointed out. But that display of the bat, I think, showed promise. And then he just kind of tailed off in the last ODI, looked a bit stuck on the crease. But surely, he clearly has talent. Interesting, maybe he'll get into the T20 side, because I know he's a good T20 player as well. So maybe that's more an avenue for him to go down, potentially, because I know, again, I don't follow the IPL as closely as some others, but I know he plays for Mumbai Indians and bats above Hardik Pandya. So, yeah, for them. So I know that he's a pretty talented player. And that's all from me. Is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap up?
I think we've pretty much covered every single base there, Faizan, to be honest. I don't really think there's much more that I needed to touch upon. I mean, we've covered all 3 series, haven't we?
Yes, we have. The pleasure as always, though, to have you on, Aaron. I say as always, first time. So thank you very much, though, for being on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking cricket. And you said that you probably haven't, I hope I haven't bored you anyway, as well.
Oh, absolutely not, no. I mean, I'd say likewise as well, obviously, to your viewers out there as well. Apologies. But yeah.
No, it's been fantastic speaking to you. And hopefully we can get you on again to talk cricket. And yeah, really enjoyed it. And where can people find you? So you've obviously got your podcast. Do you
Yep.
want to plug yourself?
Oh, just briefly, yeah, the County Cricket Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, at the County Cricket on Twitter. And yeah, just give it a listen. We've got some good guests, some good, obviously, banter on there as well with me and my co-host, Joe Nutsy Nuttall. So yeah, if you want to listen to some county cricket related content, as I said, with good guests, good interviews, the County Cricket Podcast is the place for you.
Perfect. Yeah, and also follow you on Instagram, which you've got fantastic little snippets and bite-sized little reviews and stuff as well, which is really nice. So make sure you follow Aaron at the Cricket Connoisseur, isn't it?
Yep, with an underscore. Yep.
With underscore, okay, on Instagram. Thanks very much, mate. And guys as well, please do remember to like the channel and subscribe as well if you haven't already. Thank you very much for tuning in.